This is the Get Geekish podcast.
Ever felt a spark of excitement when talking about your favorite things? That's the feeling we celebrate on Get Geekish. Here, there's no gatekeeping, just a community celebrating the unique things that make us, well, us. Now, here's your hosts, Derek and Beano.
Welcome back to another edition of the Get Geekish podcast. I'm Beano, it's Derek over there, and we're starting this week off by talking about more movies, but kind of a sad thing about movies.
Yeah. I mean, so, take it back. I guess put it in perspective. We kind of touched on this before. I appreciate the easiness and efficientness, or whatever you want to call it, of being able to select your seats, right? Growing up, when we wanted to see a movie on opening weekend, it was a maybe you're going to get in and maybe you're going to get some good seats.
There was a lot of time standing around and waiting in line.
Yeah.
To put it lightly.
Well, this time we went to a couple midnight showings too, and it was just, we had to make sure that we got there soon enough, and we would sit there and count and go, okay, where are we going to sit?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of, brought it up again. We went and saw Wild Robot over the weekend, which I think you did too. And, my daughter, the movie was at 4:55, and it's like 4 o'clock. It's like, we need to go. I was like, no, we don't. You're perfectly fine. I was like, you never made it when, growing up like we did. Being able to.
Just out of curiosity, are you still the guy that shows up half an hour early even though you have reserved seats?
Okay. You're greater than me, man.
I'm bad enough now when I go to especially big day movies that come out. I'm like, okay, I know there's going to be at least 25 minutes of previews and 10 minutes of commercials. Yeah, we're fine. We can wait another 20 minutes.
Yeah, there's definitely times like that, but so I guess what kind of brought up this whole movie thing is I have the Alamo Draft House season pass, which I can see a movie a day, right? Doesn't matter. I can see a movie a day for as long as I want, as long as I have this pass, right? So I've been trying to see a movie a week, but what kind of, I don't know, midway through had the realization of like watching these movies, I'm like, there's a lot of movies coming out that are just kind of, eh. And then there's a lot of big budget movies that came out that are definitely, Madam Web being one of them, Borderlands being another one, where Borderlands tanked. And I know that was one that we were kind of excited about, but honestly, I haven't seen it, and I don't think I'm going to see it because everything that I've seen is not great.
See, I haven't seen it yet either. I'm waiting for it to just come out in streaming at this point. But I've talked to a few people that said it's pretty entertaining if you're not just going in to be let down from what they did to a video game franchise. So hopefully they'll still be entertaining. But it's like you said, all the movies that have been coming in, not all of them, but the vast majority of them, you go through it and you get all these big expectations. And I used to think I just had things built up in my head like, oh, these are going to be so good. And then I get let down. And now that I'm watching more and more and more and getting older and older, I sit back and like, no, a lot of these are just not as good, or they decided to like just skip over some very important parts, or, it's you can't get the trifecta. You can't get big star celebrities and a good story and special effects all the same movies. Like you got to pick two of them.
And that's the thing too, is like, seeing Madam Web, and from what I've understood and read, Borderlands kind of suffered the same thing. Like they rushed the CGI, and there's like mixing issues where, and I'm not even joking, dude. When I was watching Madam Web in the theater, I thought my brain was broken because there were times where they were talking and you were thinking you were watching a dubbed movie because the words that were coming out did not match their mouth. And I'm like, this came from Sony. I'm like, you have all this money to do something like this, and it's mediocre. Look at Thor: Love and Thunder, right? There were some CGI issues in that. There were some CGI issues in other Quantum Mania, where it's just like they rushed through it. And I don't know, if you look back to when we were growing up, we had 5 or 6 summer blockbusters to look forward to, and then throughout the year, it was, kind of steady, maybe nothing mind blowing, but it seems now every week they're throwing a bunch of movies to the theater. And not only that, you have to compete with Netflix doing their own movies and launching those, as well as Amazon and Hulu doing the same thing. And then a movie that was in the theater a month ago was already streaming.
Yep. So I think what it all boils down to is we're talking about just movie fatigue. We've gone through superhero fatigue and certain genre fatigue, but it's just movies in general fatigue at this point. That there's so many studios that it seems that most of Hollywood and pop culture has become the quantity versus quality. As long as we can have a new show every week, it's gonna be fine. It's good. Who cares? Somebody will watch it.
Thing is, I mean, it goes with the streaming services and the TV shows too, which we kind of touched on before, where they just come out with streaming show after streaming show after streaming show, and it gets to a point where you're like, I don't want to watch that, but I don't have time,
Hmm.
And then you look at streaming shows like Last of Us and Fallout and how well those work as a series. They took their time. You can tell that they put this will probably work better for Borderlands had they done this, or maybe not the Crow, but it may have saved some franchises.
Yeah. And I mean, that ties in the same thing, too. If we're talking about being fatigued in movies, it's not even just the production values, it's the fact of everything now seems to, not everything, but it feels like everything is now a sequel or remake. So on top of having similar movies, you're having the exact same movies come out over and
Mm-hmm.
over and over again. And I know they're trying to reinvent it and get it to new audiences and blah, 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 but at some point when people have access to all these movies, it gets really frustrating to go out and want to see a new movie. You're like, oh, well, I've already seen this movie before. It's just got new actors now. Like, what's the point?
That too, and you and I have definitely been guilty of this. Well, maybe smart, depending how you want to look at it. Where a movie's coming out, and you're like, yeah, I haven't want to see that, but I don't know if I want to see it in the theater. We're streaming in a month.
Hmm.
We've been set up, and the pandemic was good for some things. Kind of forcing the movie theaters to do that. But now I think since that is over, in a sense, they're trying to push people back into the theater. And the quick statistic is in 2023, movie theaters in the United States and Canada sold around 825.2 million tickets, which is more than 22, but less than 2019, which is pre-pandemic. So they're slowly getting people back in the theater, but I think I don't know. It's going to get to the point where people aren't going to want to go back because they go and watch something and they're like, well, that was mediocre.
Yeah, there's nothing special about it there. And to match your numbers, I actually as well did some research. Studious of us. But you mentioned that the movies in theaters were getting back up to the early 2000s numbers because in the 2010s, 2015s times, U.S. wide theatrical releases were up into the 700 to 800 per year. And in 2023, there's only scheduled to be 500. Well, there's only 504. So we're still below what we were a few years ago, but it's going up and up and up. But you think, okay, we're getting back to what we were 10 years ago. But 10 years ago was before the whole streaming evolution came around. So we're talking almost 600 wide release movies plus how many thousands of streaming releases and streaming TV shows that came out. There's every service, like you mentioned, that are out there that it's not just, oh, it used to be just Netflix, and then there was Netflix and Amazon Prime, and there's Netflix and Hulu, and you go through it and you subscribe to a freaking cable package of streaming services now, and every single one of them has their own exclusive series, their own this, their own that. And I mean, if you want to watch all the new content, you literally have to pay hundreds of dollars a month in service. And if I'm paying hundreds of dollars a month to watch TV at home, I'm not going to go drop $25 a ticket to go sit and watch a movie at a theater.
That's the thing too, is it used to be the theater used to be kind of an experience. And now it's, to me, in a sense, it's, yeah, it's still an experience, but at the same time, it's kind of stressful and not as fun because you go in there and you're like, okay, I just dropped, if you don't have the season pass, I mean, Cinemark is one ticket a month, right? Alamo, you can go see for one person. So if you want to take somebody else, you got to drop $12 for a ticket. And then on top of that, it's food. And we all know how expensive theater snacks are and everything like that. And it's just becoming this whole thing of like, boy, and I don't know about you, but if I see somebody coughing in the theater, like a nasty cough, you're like, really? Come on. So,
Well, I got to admit that I've also moved on to, I'm a theater snob now, of if I go to the theater, I'm going to a theater with heated reclining seats I can pick out ahead of time. Like,
Yep. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's still kind of an experience, but at the same time, it's you go through the hassle, right? You go through this, you go through that, you check out for family of three or family of four for tickets. You're looking at $40, $50, right? And then you're looking at snacks on top of that, which is another 30 to 40. And then you see a movie that's mediocre, and you're like, is this worth it anymore?
yeah, when you're sitting at home and you see something that's mediocre, you're like, no big deal. But when you made an event of it, this was my evening plans. This was my entertainment for the night. You're like, wow, that was 2.5 hours I'm not getting back.
Right? Well, and that's the thing is like what when the pandemic started, who got rushed straight streaming because they wanted people to watch it. We watched it. You remember we watched that together over virtual, and it was fun. But I don't think I would have paid money to see it in the theater. And then you look at movies now, like you kind of talked about, where it's just a sequel after sequel or a remake after remake. And I get it, but there's also remakes coming out that were only 10 years old or something like that. They're already talking about remaking the Harry Potter franchise, and it's just like, why?
Yeah, there's certain things you just have to let lie. And they've been talking. Was it? I believe I read some article somewhere that the creator of Back to the Future has been adamant of not letting anybody remake that movie because it just would not be the same.
Right.
And which it would I would not like to see a movie about somebody going back in time to 1994 right now. Like, just wouldn't work out that way. But I know we can harp on the beat on the dead horse of like they just need to come up with more ideas, just more ideas. Well, that's easier said than done, but it's more just hashing out the ideas that are there because there's thousands of people that work in the creative industry of screenwriters and directors and producers that have all these amazing ideas for things that could get done, but everything has to go through the bureaucratic mumbo jumbo and all the I imagine half the movies that we complain about that have been terrible probably were amazing at one point or in somebody's vision, but then somebody else came in and changed this and put this out here and took this out and changed this, and we're going to have this, and we got sponsored by this, so change this out, and it just destroys the heart of what the creative piece was supposed to be in the, never-ending goal of making slightly more money.
Well, I think case in point, recently you can look at Suicide Squad, the first one that came out, David Abrams or whatever, Crowder's Justice League, right? Where they went in and they were like, oh, well, let's make it more like the Avengers, and like they chopped it up and it didn't work. Borderlands is another one that, if you read kind of what it went through, like it started filming pre-pandemic, and then they had to take a break and went through a whole bunch of everything. And then Lionsgate was like, let's make it PG-13 to make it more accessible to everybody. And it's just, when you have something that's mature content as it is and you make it PG-13, it doesn't work.
It's one of those, you need to make those decisions going into the movie. Like, before the screenplay is approved, like, here's the plan. Like,
and I think you kind of hit it on the head too when you're like, I don't think it's a problem of ideas, right? I'm all for some remakes because there's been some good remakes out there, or some good sequels. But I think it's more of like, rather than pushing to try to get the bottom dollar and raise your profits or your stock or whatever, you need to take the time and actually flesh something out. And if it goes to rewrite, then that's fine. I mean, we as humans have been conditioned to wait for things. I mean, granted, it's a little less now because everything's just so at our fingertips. Where, if a streaming service puts out a show and they put out one episode a week, but
I'm definitely those people that can't wait around for those things, and I'm probably a digital television marketer's worst nightmare of shows that I love. 9 times out of 10, I will wait until most, if not all, the episodes are watched because I hated it when it was in the 80s and 90s, and I hate it now. I will not watch a show that I know is going to be a giant cliffhanger just to have to wait 2 to 6 weeks to see what happens next.
right.
Like, I can't stand that wait, and maybe I'm, weird or some old cranky guy that doesn't fit in with, but that's just, I don't, it's not like I want to go talk about it with everyone I see for the next week. Oh, did you see the show? Can you believe what happened? I just want to watch the show and be entertained. Like,
what's funny is he said he was weeks waiting on a cliffhanger. And I think back to our childhood when TV season would be September to like April or May. Then if they ended on that cliffhanger, we would have to wait until September again.
I know, and most of the time you forgot. If you think back to this, why they stopped doing that, because they thought, oh, this will keep people excited for 6.5 months. They'll come back and watch it. But most of the time, you completely forgot what happened, or they do the remake. You have to be like, oh yeah, yeah, there's somebody died at the end of that season, didn't they? Like it just kind of like cleaned the slate. And then now, I love a good cliffhanger in certain ways as the next person, but why does every show have to end with the like, oh my god, oh, like, can't we just wrap a story up and say then we'll have another great story for you next time? Like,
But it's not even that. It's movies too. Movies are, like you said, they're sequels. So a movie comes out and you watch it, and then we have to wait a couple years, right, for a new movie. It's kind of like the superhero thing too. Like they keep going the story, but when the new movie comes out that has a tie-in with that other movie, you're like, what happened? So then you have to rewatch that movie before you go see it. Like sometimes I wish there was like a previously on. The problem is if I remember correctly, some of the previously ons in TV shows were awful. They're like being previously on, and you'd watch it and be like,
that's not the same thing that I saw before. Yeah, I mean, it's the joke about that stuff too. I can't tell if it's just me, but I wish video games had the mode of like, hey, let me give you a catch up date on the story since you haven't played this game in 6 months, let me remind you what you're supposed to be doing right now. But if there was a movie that came out with, the new, Avengers 27 comes out, and then the first minute or two of the movie is just, let's catch you up to speed in case you didn't watch the other movies. Remember this guy, and here's this, and this happened, this happened. Okay, now here we're at. Let's go. Like, take a cue from the actual comic books themselves, because most comic books, the first page has a prologue that gives you like a little bit of exposition as to what happened before this book, what happened outside of this book, just to put you in that state of mind. It doesn't just randomly put you on a page in a comic. You'll be like, "Wow, what's happening? Why is Punisher shooting people?" Like,
it's one of those ones, especially I touched on this last one, but I've seen a lot of movies this year so far, and honestly, I'd say dang near all of them are pretty forgettable. Like they're just, no, I thought,
yeah, and they're movies that I enjoyed, but it feels like they could have been so much more, or they could have had something that came out, but it's just like, oh, that's okay, it's a good story.
mm-hmm.
And maybe that comes with the age of having watched so many movies over the years, but I still once in a while get blown away by a movie that you're just like, wow, that was amazing. That was so good, but it's few and far between.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is too, is you look at, we're both, we're both geeks in our own right, but we both love movies, right? We're the cinephiles, and you have thousands of DVDs downstairs. We have tons that are digital, right?
Mm-hmm.
But those movies, even the 80s and 90s ones, those ones had something to bring us back to rewatch it and rewatch it and rewatch it. And lately, movies that come out, I'm like, maybe I'll see it again.
Yeah.
But there hasn't been anything that's like, oh, I need to watch this over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm. Whereas I think back to even the early stages of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, some of those first Phase 1 movies, I probably watched 10, 15, 20 times. Because you just watch it, and I'm going to watch it again. I'm going to look for some details. You put it on the background, be on somebody else's ass, and you're just like, oh, all right, Iron Man. Yeah, let's do this again. Okay. Like, but a lot of new ones, I don't have them on my list to even buy to have on hand to watch again. It's like, if it's on a streaming service somewhere, I'm really bored, maybe I'll watch it. Like,
yeah, I was going to say, like, Love and Thunder, I saw once in the theater, or Quantum Mania saw once, and it's just like, I mean, Deadpool I did see twice in the theater. But that's a different. The hype was real with that one, at least for me. So.
Yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine is one of the movies that I would put on the upper echelon of movies that have come out in the last year that I've enjoyed and wanted to go back to, because that's become my go-to now. Is not just is it good, is the rewatch worthwhile? Yeah. Is it a great movie, or is it a great movie that I don't care about ever seeing again?
Right. Don't get me wrong. Only like I'm not gonna say there's all stuff from it, but there's been some good movies that come out. But I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I don't need to see it again. It's just I don't know. I mean, again, going back to what you said, it's just the quality. Make it sound old, but the quality isn't there. Granted, I'm not saying movies that came out in the '90s or the '80s were all that great because we'll rewatch some of them now and you're like, ooh. But I mean, you watch Back to the Future now, it's still a great flick. Even the sequels are still fun and watchworthy. The original Jurassic Park, right? You watch those and you're just like, yeah, Independence Day, yeah. But lately, it's just I think movie studios are just trying too hard lately.
They're trying to push it to connect to everything, to connect to too many different audiences, to connect to the other properties, to look for a sequel. Like, I would really love a movie studio team to be like, hey, look, director, producer, actors, I would like you to focus on this particular movie for the next 9 months and make it the best freaking movie you've ever seen. Don't worry about what's going to happen next or what's going to happen in the third installment or what's going to happen in the spin-off episode. Don't care if that's going to happen yet. Let's worry about this story and making it good and worthwhile.
And then, like, that's what I kind of think about, like with Alien Romulus. Yes, it was a sequel, but they took that property and did something a little bit different, where they told a different side of the story. Which, if you're going to do a sequel or anything like that, I think that's the way to do it. Is tell a different side of the story. Take some aspect of that story, and to it. And that's why, like, Alien Romulus kind of added to the war. I know a lot of people didn't like the ending, but I mean, if you watch the other movies, it kind of makes sense. But again, that's the whole thing. Is like,
I will hand it that too. If that's a way to take a property and do something different. I'll hand it to even Star Wars. A lot of the Star Wars stories, there's been some good, there's been some bad, but they're at least branching out and like, oh, let's tell something different about this universe. We just don't need another Darth Vader origin story or another Skywalker spinoff. But like, hey, here's some other people you never heard about before, or some planets on the other side of the galaxy. Like, here's a different story that's still a take on that property. Like,
yeah, if Star Wars could stay away from Tatooine, that'd be a miracle. Stay away from Tatooine, get away from the Skywalkers. Mandalorian was kind of a fresh take on it, so. And they're, of course, made that into a movie. And it's just like, and honestly, it seems more nowadays like the movie theaters or movie companies or whatever are trying to like out popcorn bucket each other too. Because I mean, like, who knew that was going to be the thing of 2024 is the popcorn bucket wars.
mm-hmm. And
How
whatever gets
ridiculous can you get?
whatever gets people talking about stuff, and you'd think of some of these good movies that they're gonna have to find a different way if they can find a way to put it in front of people without just having to saturate the market with billions and billions of dollars of advertisements. Just putting up movie posters doesn't make anybody want to see a movie anymore. Look at both of us. We are both two of the biggest Transformer nerds I know. Have either of us seen Transformers 1 yet? No. Am I gonna see it? Yeah. But everything about it has been like, well, it's expensive. It might not be good. It might have, the voices are different. It's going to be streaming in like 2 months. Like, no, I'll see it when I see it.
Yeah.
I mean, 13-year-old me would be kicking me in the shins. Like, why are we not there in opening night with like a Transformers costume on? Like,
I think that's another thing that's kind of killing movies too, because you have some movies that when we've seen this happen that are overhyped, over marketed, and they put big names in it. You're like, oh, this is gonna be a good movie. Then you walk out, you're like, holy crap. And then there's other movies, indie movies or something like that, that have no marketing. And you see it streaming, you're like, wait, was this already in the theater? And then
mhm.
you watch it, you're like, it was really good.
I,
And
I
it's
think a good example of that is back in the early 2000s when Hoodwinked came out. It's a little animated movie about Red Riding Hood. The animation is subpar at best because it was a no-name studio put it together. But plot-wise, comedy-wise, that was probably one of the best animated movies that came out that decade. But it had no marketing, no big names. Like Patrick Warburton was probably the biggest name in it, but that was before he even was anything more than, oh, that guy on Seinfeld. Like, but had that movie had some money behind it, it could have been, Shrek size, for lack of a better term for it. But outside of that, the other movies that came out of that time, we had all kinds of money behind other crummy animated movies that just got pushed out and pushed out and pushed out in front of you everywhere. And you're like, this is stupid.
wonder how many times too has a movie been made and they talked about it and then it's shelved and then it's released a couple years later, right? And we forget about it.
Hmm.
they're like, oh, it lost a whole bunch of money. Well, it lost a whole bunch of money because you guys didn't market it, you didn't amp it up. Or you look at the ones that have been hyped up, like what was the one that was filmed, the Ladies of Gotham or whatever it was, like
Birds of Prey.
Batgirl.
Oh,
Oh,
Batgirl. Yeah,
Batgirl.
yeah.
They filmed it. It was done. Brendan Fraser said, "Yeah, it's amazing, everything like that." And there was all this hype behind it. And then the studio's like, "Yeah, we're going to film it because they basically can use it as a tax write-off." And it's like, why?
Hmm.
Like something people were actually excited about, and then you just give us another Superman. You
Yeah.
know?
Aquaman 3.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's also movies too. What like I think the early 2000s was huge on it, where they would market a movie and then you kind of forget about it, and then a couple years later you're like, "This is out? I forgot about this movie."
Hmm. And I feel bad for the people that are in charge of making these decisions because obviously there's not a cure all. Like, if you guys just did this, the world would be happy. But back to the original underlying problem of just being fatigued of so many options and so many mediocre products getting put out. I actually appreciate what Bob Iger did over at Disney and capped how many Marvel shows and movies they'll be allowed to put out a year. Like, the fact that they just had to pick arbitrary numbers seems odd, but is at
Yeah,
least putting a line in the sand like, look, with these properties, we cannot put any more than this every year because people just get sick of it. Nobody cares. Nobody wants to see a new Marvel movie every other month. I
right.
would, but the majority of people.
Well, and that's the thing too. Is you look at couples or families too, when you have options of streaming, Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, MGM Play, all these places that have movies or going to see movies. You're like, oh, what do you want to watch? I don't know. What's out? By the time you get done with, it, you're like, let's go for bed. I guess we'll make a decision next time. That's like it's oversaturation. And are we the only ones that believe that, or
I feel like we can't be. I'm to the point now where oftentimes when I go find things to watch, I go watch old stuff. I go scroll through looking for a new movie, and that's how I'm watching Back to the Future again, or find something from the 80s or 90s that this is a good movie. Forget it, like because there's so many other ones that it's the you have to take a chance. Well, it's an hour and 45 minutes. Let's just watch some tried and true.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, and like you said, it's remakes that maybe don't need to be done, like the Witches remake. That you have Angela Houston in the original one, and then they did the remake in 2020 with Anne Hathaway, and you're like, did it need to be done? I don't know. You Willy Wonka? No, no, it doesn't need to be done. So,
Yeah, and some are good. Like my daughter thoroughly enjoyed Wonka. It's all right for it, but
yeah.
it's how many remakes of that have they done now? Like,
Well, I do have to applaud Wonka a little bit because again, they tried to go something different.
here's
And
a different part of the story, not
yeah,
just the
a
same one.
different side of the story. Exactly.
Mm.
I don't know. I mean, we could sit here and ramble on like old curmudgeons,
Back in
but
my day.
yeah,
But yeah, I would agree. Movie fatigue it's a real thing, and I don't think we're alone. But hopefully, if you're listening, you can jump on the comment section and stuff. What your opinion is? Are you just fatigued by certain movies or TV shows now, or are you super excited? There's just more media than you could ever possibly consume coming out every week. Like,
yeah, it's ridiculous.
I have everything
Like this.
funnel through the Google TV to watch the different streaming services on there, and just
Yeah.
the 3 or 4 I have subscriptions to. There's more things than I could possibly ever want to watch.
Yeah, or maybe you're like us and you see a movie come out in the theater, like, it'll be streaming in a couple months. I'll just wait.
Yeah, and
That's
for
what we
people that
do.
still like to buy the physical copies, get this. Okay, one little rant before I leave. Like, I was looking at pre-ordering Beetlejuice, right? They got a cool, steelbook Blu-ray coming out for it. You can pre-order it now. Movies in theaters, you can pre-order the Blu-ray, 4K, whatever you call it. If you pre-order it, it's not supposed to be delivered till like next October. I'm like, what is it? What?
We're streaming digitally on October 8th because I just got the notification for it. So,
Yeah, and that's the thing. Because a lot years ago, I'd be excited because you could pre-order a movie, you'd buy the DVD, Blu-ray, and get the digital code that you could stream it on there and be okay, it's good to go. Or you could pre-order early and give you the digital version for free to watch it. But now they're trying to push you to pay to go see the movie in the theater. then pay to have it on digital and streaming when it comes home, and then a few months after that, then they'll release the actual physical disc. Oh, you really liked it? You want your own copy? Here, buy this. And like they're just trying to get people to push the 3 different purchases of the movie, and it hurts my brain and my heart.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I definitely think there's an oversaturation and a whole bunch of money going on, trying to, like you said, squeeze every point out of you.
Yes, but dear Hollywood, dear network television, dear streaming services, please, if a show's not done, delay it a few weeks. Get it right. If the CGI is not done, delay it a few weeks. I still think back to how spoiled are CGI now that they rush through these jobs, these billion-dollar movies that they're just, we got it done, get it done. You remember the first Toy Story movie? Yep. It took them over a day to render every 30 seconds of that movie. It was 800,000 machine hours to just render Toy Story 1. That movie was years in the making. And you look back on it now, and it's not that amazing animation compared to today's standards. But today's standards are like, oh, we need to have an intergalactic fight scene. You guys got about 4 hours. Make it happen.
There's the crunch is real. I mean, you definitely look at some of the movies from the early 2000s, even the 90s, that have some decent CGI. And you're like, this really held up. And then you see some movies that came out 2 years ago, and you're like, where's CGI from?
So yes, Hollywood, network TV, streaming services, get it right, please. I'll still give you my money. I'll still watch your stuff, but just make it good.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time. Patient.
Well, let us know in the comments what you think about movie fatigue. Is it real? Are we crazy and just old curmudgeons? Or are you also feeling the same thing, that Hollywood's gotten a lot of mediocrity out there? Let us know at Get Geekish.
This has been the Get Geekish podcast. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, share, and hit those notifications. We'll talk to you at the next episode. But until then, enjoy your passions. Go out and get geekish about something.